if you are out there and you are yo-yo dieting, okay, if you are somebody who says, why can't I keep this weight off? If you are somebody who says, I'm a chocoholic, I'm a breadaholic, I can't seem to stop. If you're saying, I need more willpower, I need more discipline, if you're stuck in self-blame, if you're ever wondered why one little meal can set you off for months, right? This is the lived experience of somebody with addiction, right? This is what's going on in their head. I just can't seem to figure it out. I don't know why. I have discipline in other things. I'm a breadaholic, chocoholic. It's in my family. I just can't seem to do it. This is what people say. From the clinical side, what you should be looking out for if you're a doctor or a coach or a nurse out there who's seeing this, you want to think of the 3 C's, right? One is compulsion. You feel compelled, right? The food calls to you, right? 2, loss of control, right? Loss of control is a very characteristic feeling. You feel like you just can't control yourself, right? And the last C is consequences, right? You're eating despite poor consequences you're not happy with. And so if you are experiencing this as a person or seeing a patient experience those things or saying the things, doc, I just need to do better. Doc, I can't figure out why, right? You need to be alerted to the fact that this person is struggling and they need serious help. And that shaming and blaming them and telling them to just pick themselves up by the bootstraps, this is not the messaging they need. You have a problem. There's loss of control. There's consequences. You're using this substance despite poor health, and you need help.
You're listening to the Kick Sugar Coach podcast, exploring sugar addiction, metabolic health, trauma, and paths to recovery. Glad you're here. Hello and welcome everybody to an interview today with Dr. Tro. Dr. Tro Kalayjian. I always mess it up. What is it?
No, Dr. Tro, that's it. There you
Tro,
go.
just leave it at Dr. Tro Florence. He is a
Yeah,
board
there you go.
certified physician in internal medicine and obesity medicine. His weight loss story began in his own childhood, and he grew up in an obese family. And he personally and deeply understands the emotions and the struggle and the shame and the frustration that comes along with being overweight and following all the mainstream advice and not having it resolve. He has a private practice and he focuses primarily on reversing type 2 diabetes, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. They recently published a 6-month medical weight loss program, but they have a year data now and they're about to have 2 years of follow-up data. So, I mean, he is really tracking the long-term success of his program and it's gobsmacking. It was so good it was published. What was it published in?
Published in MDPI, and we published in Frontiers in Psychiatry and Frontiers in Nutrition.
Incredible. Amazing. And it yielded impressive results with an average weight loss of 38 pounds per person. They had significant reductions in cardiac risk, A1C levels dropped, blood pressure normalized, and of course, they were able to get off medications, saving patients, a lot of money and giving them back a lot of life. His practice is evidence-based. It's supported by 7 publications showing the emphasis on metabolic health being the key driver of transforming, our chronic health crisis. Welcome, Dr. Tro.
Thank you so much for having me.
For those people for whom you might be new to them, do you want to tell us a little bit about your own story, your own journey, and how you landed here as an expert in this space?
Yeah, so let's talk about, I guess, who I am. I am a internal medicine doctor, an obesity medicine doctor, a metabolic health practitioner. I lost 150 pounds. I did it by rejecting everything we've been told, eating, 6 to 12 servings of grains, eating 6 to 12 servings of fruits and vegetables. That went out the window. Controlling my portions, controlling my controlling my calories. All of that went out the window, and that's how I reclaimed my life. I was a 350-pound father. I was a 350-pound doctor. I was a 350-pound husband, and I was suffering. And I was suffering like a lot of the people who are listening to this. Every joint in my body hurt. I had no energy, brain fog. I was living a shell of myself, a slave to food, blaming myself, riddled with shame and guilt. I was not living. I was trapped and I was in prison, and it was a prison of my own making inside my own mind, and nobody else could see it. All they could see was a 350-pound guy, and all they could say was, why don't you count your calories? Why don't you just try harder? And it was not the advice I needed. I needed a different message. So finally, 10 years ago or 11 years ago, my wife really inspired me to understand obesity. And I went into the literature. I found people like you and all of the different speakers that are here today inspired me. Nina Teicholz, a big influence, Jason Fung, and so many others, Dr. Lustig, Dr. Ludwig, huge influences on me, and Eric Westman. I read all of their books, all their work, and I said to myself, gosh, like we have this all wrong, right? The science is all wrong. The government is all wrong. And I hadn't cooked a steak at that point ever in my life. I'd never cooked a steak. And so I drastically changed how I ate. And I started with a harm reduction approach. I listed all of my cravings. I listed all the times I struggled. I listed all the different places I went where I struggled to make good food choices. And I just came up with better options that were lower in carbs. So I started with a harm reduction approach. And after losing 80 pounds the first year, I felt amazing. I edged towards abstinence, essentially eliminating a lot of the key ingredients that were causing me physical and emotional and psychological distress. Namely, let's name them because everybody says ultra processed food addiction, but let's talk about the ingredients: sugar, processed carbs, processed fats, right? And essentially eliminated these things. And it's been over a decade I've been able to keep the weight off. Certainly, there have been ups and downs. I had some injuries, I've been in chronic pain, I had stress, and my weight ebbs and flows. But for the most part, 150 pounds has been kept off. So that's my story in a nutshell. And now, I have devoted my entire career. I left the Yale system where I was an internal medicine doctor, and I took out huge loans. And we were talking about this before you hit record, took huge risks so that I could create a medical practice that actually heals. And I've been working tirelessly. I started with just me and my office manager, Colleen, and that was, 8 years ago. And now we have almost 20 employees, three providers, four health coaches, a personal trainer, a huge team and growing. And we have, 10 studies now, 10 papers. And as you mentioned, we have 1 year data showing 43 pounds off on average and an 80% reduction in binge eating symptoms. And the question is how do we do this? Simple answer: a multidisciplinary team, right? Coaches, trainers, doctors working together. It uses remote equipment, scales, blood pressure cuffs, CGMs. We have an app that provides a community with live meetings every day. And we have one-on-one visits with your health coach, frequent lab work, so you see your body heal. And we have even stepped into machine learning and AI tools to be able to predict relapse and to be able to predict weight regain and trying to intervene sooner. So it's a blend of empathy, technology, research to honestly to just do what medicine should have done maybe decades ago. If our cars can have a, get service button on it, and if our cars can have a, check engine light on it, if we can't get our medical practices to do that around chronic disease and food addiction, then we have a problem, right? Then we have a problem. Our cars do not matter more than our health. Our bank accounts that have real-time alerts do not matter more than our health, right? So our health should at least have as many systems around it protecting it as our, cars and our money. And that is my mission, is to create systems around patient health.
So if I was to kind of understand that metaphor a bit better, what you're saying is that on our dashboard, I might get an alert saying it's time for an oil change or tire rotation or something like that. But there are early warning signs before the engine goes into a seizure or something bad happens, and that there should be people around monitoring for this early signs of metabolic syndrome and intervening before there's like a diagnosis of a disease. Is that what you're suggesting?
But even in the food addiction realm, right? We know, right, where we turn back to. If you've had chronic obesity, yo-yo dieting your entire life, right, we know the potential harm. And we can use tools. We can see that maybe you're not stepping on the scale the way that you did. Maybe your blood sugar is fluctuating in a way that it hadn't before because you haven't slept and you're under stress. Maybe your blood pressure's up 1 point more than it usually is. Maybe your water weight's up because you're just having that extra meal, even if it's, a healthy meal, that extra little meal with that extra little insulin that we can detect before the handrails come off. And maybe all you need is somebody to say, hey, maybe it's time to check that engine, right? Maybe it's time to like just have a check-in, right? So if a medical practice can't do this, like what are we doing? What are we waiting for you to gain 100 pounds a year later so that we can come back and shame you? Why can't we help in real time? Right. So my vision, for healthcare, it's a bit invasive, but it's simply to be as much as a service as your car is, right? As much as a service as your bank account is. Like your bank account's monitoring your bank. It's like, hey, I think there's fraud here. Like, do you want to talk to me and make sure this is you? Right? So why can't medicine do that? Hey, like you've had stable blood sugars and your blood pressure's been great, and all of a sudden we're seeing your water weight's up and your blood sugar's fluctuating. We know there's something going on. Do you want to talk about it?
Mm.
And it's not like a to blame you or to shame you. It's like, hey, we're here to help, and maybe you want to talk about it. Maybe you don't, but at least we asked, right? At least we were there, available, empathetic, and ready to help. So I'm hoping we can change the course of medicine. I really am.
Wow, I see what you're saying. So it wasn't really about disease diagnosis. It's the early warning signs that someone's about to fall off the path that's going to heal them. They're going to go back, that gravitational pull back to the old ways of eating that got them sick in the first place.
Well, yeah, well, then we get the families recruited and do all the prevention, right? Because the same struggles you have are the same struggles, the same struggles I have. My kids are going to struggle in the same way. We've seen it. Okay. Obesity spreads in social networks, depression spreads in social networks. And guess what? The reverse is true. Happiness spreads in social networks. Thinness, leanness, good metabolic health spreads in social networks. So we absolutely can prevent, and it's by accessing the families and doing good screening, like checking a fasting insulin and checking a triglyceride and HDL level to get to disease beforehand. So we can do what you're saying, and we will do those things. But can we even start with helping those who need us the most, right? Instead of relegating them to surgery and injections that are going to fail them in 2 years.
Hmm.
Sorry
Totally.
that I'm so strong, Florence.
Oh,
Sorry
no,
that I'm so, aggressive, but I'm
no.
passionate.
It doesn't feel aggressive. It feels like a big giant hug. There's a documentary out on Netflix called Fit for TV. Have you seen it?
Tell me about it.
Watch it. Like, watch it. You're going to love it. Anyone who's listening to this interview, watch it. It captures so brilliantly the desperation, the pain, the despair, the frustration of millions of people who are overweight and can't quite seem to get that sorted for themselves. And they've tried everything, they've done desperate things like surgeries, but for 16 years, the show, The Biggest Loser, ran, and it was one of the all-time most popular shows on TV. I think there was like 15 million viewers at the end of the 10th season, like huge. And one of my dear friends, Debbie, actually she used to pray that she'd get picked to go on the show because she just felt like if she could get on the show, they were going to help her sort the problem. But we know what happened. They lost weight on the show and they went home to gain it all back, if not more. And there were only two people that they had followed up with that had kept their weight down-ish, and both of them were on GLP-1s. It was glaring that the piece that they were missing was maintenance. The piece that they were missing is how to do exactly what you're doing. How do you catch the early warning signs that they're about to go back to what's familiar to the body, familiar ways of eating, familiar ways of thinking, feeling, behaving with food and their self-care. So, I mean, that was the missing piece. That was the missing piece. And these people went back to lives of despair. And so I feel like you are passionate about this because you're right that the absolute pain that this problem is causing, metabolic syndrome, obesity, diabetes, it's a tremendous kind of suffering.
Yeah, so let's describe that so the listener understands, right? Because sometimes it's tough. I'm going to talk about it from the clinical sense in a minute, but I'm going to talk about it from what the person is thinking, feeling. Okay, if you are out there and you are yo-yo dieting, okay, if you are somebody who says, "Why can't I keep this weight off?" If you are somebody who says, "I'm a chocoholic, I'm a breadaholic, I can't seem to stop." If you're saying, I need more willpower, I need more discipline, if you're stuck in self-blame, if you're ever wondered why one little meal can set you off for months, right? This is the lived experience of somebody with addiction, right? This is what's going on in their head. I just can't seem to figure it out. I don't know why. I have discipline in other things. I'm a breadaholic, chocoholic. It's in my family. I just can't seem to do it. This is what people say. From the clinical side, what you should be looking out for if you're a doctor or a coach or a nurse out there who's seeing this, you want to think of the three C's, right? One is compulsion. You feel compelled, right? The food calls to you, right? Two, loss of control, right? Loss of control is a very characteristic feeling. You feel like you just can't control yourself, right? And the last C is consequences, right? You're eating despite poor consequences you're not happy with. And so if you are experiencing this as a person or seeing a patient experience those things or saying the things, doc, I just need to do better. Doc, I can't figure out why, right? You need to be alerted to the fact that this person is struggling and they need serious help. And that shaming and blaming them and telling them to just pick themselves up by the bootstraps, this is not the messaging they need. You have a problem. There's loss of control. There's consequences. You're using this substance despite poor health, and you need help. And I want to help you, right? I want to help you. This is the way you should be thinking. And if you can't help that person, if you have no track record in helping that person, please send them to Toward Health, right? Or Nationwide Medical Practice, right? Because we have a track record, right? We know how to reach these people. If you can't do it, don't be ashamed. Like I'm not an interventional cardiologist. I don't know how to put a stent in you. I'm not Phil Ovadia. I don't know how to take your heart out and bypass it, right? I'm certainly, I'm not Eric Berg. I don't know chiropractic. I don't know how to change my, to realign my back as well as he does. So if you're a provider out there or a coach out there, and or if you're a person suffering out there, and you're like, I can't do this. Well, you're not the only one, right? We have 15,000 people using the Toward Health app who are just like us, who are struggling every day. But if you're a doctor out there or a family member and you're so just frustrated, why can't they seem to do it? Well, send them to somebody who can do it, right? Send them to somebody who's experienced with this. Because unfortunately, the modern world is going to do two things. They're going to set you up for an injection or they're going to set you up for surgery, right? Which is unfortunately, they're immensely helpful interventions. I will acknowledge that. But they are only one part of the toolbox, and there are other ways to do this. So look out for loss of control. compulsion, and consequences. Somebody using despite consequences, the three C's. I think that's very critical if you're out there listening to this.
Hmm. Hmm. There are
Sorry,
lots
fine.
there
Yeah,
there's
bye.
there's evidence to suggest that there are people who are obese that don't fall on the food addiction, ultra processed food addiction spectrum. And there are people who are normal weight or underweight that also do, qualify for the, I'm on the addiction spectrum, food addiction spectrum. So if someone doesn't have addiction, can you still help them? I'm assuming, talk to us a bit about how you can reverse obesity, even if you don't identify with the three C's.
Yeah, so that's a great question. There's not a one-to-one overlap, right? So just imagine I was a 14-year-old kid. I was struggling with all the symptoms that I just described. Okay, but I compensated for it with being vegan and anorexic, right? So you didn't see the obesity. You fundamentally saw somebody who didn't eat for a month, right? Because I was struggling with something I did not understand, and I was looking to grit and starve my way to solve the problem, right? So you're absolutely right. You would have looked at me at 14 and said, "Oh my God, this kid lost weight." Right. And so you can miss the problem. You're absolutely right. It's important. A lot of times bulimia is a great example of this, right? There's a huge loss of control, but there's normal weight. And some of the telltale signs are poor dentition, bad breath, right? Because they're purging so that there's no consequence on their weight or less consequence on their weight. And you're absolutely right. There's also certain populations, the French, Asian, sub-Asian populations that also don't show obesity. They may have some intra-abdominal obesity. You could tell if you look closely, but they don't appear obese. They're not going to be certainly like me that was 350 pounds. So you can't judge a book by its cover. You're absolutely right. The internal journey somebody is going through is different than the external journey. So I think it's important to screen for this in the clinical setting. We use a modified cage questionnaire. We also use the binge eating scale. We also use, the food addiction questionnaire. And these are tools, certainly Jen Unwin, who you all will hear from, and Bitten Johnson, who you'll hear from today. We'll talk about their screening strategies. And any one of these is a great way to screen for this with or without obesity. There's some estimates, Ashley Gearhart estimated that this may be up to 60% in the obese population, and about 30% of adults may have food addiction. So those are just some things to look out for. Certainly not everybody. Um, so I think you bring up an excellent point for the clinician out there to just know, oh, who is she? There's a great speaker from South Africa, Karen Thompson,
Mhm.
who talks about her, she was a model, but she suffered from addiction and she had to restrict and to sort of compensate for this. So you're absolutely right. Don't judge a book by its cover. If you're a clinician out there, be alerted to the fact that you can be thin and have these symptoms. Um, there's certainly things called exercise bulimia, for example, which is, eating and over exercising to compensate. And it's a very torturous cycle. It's no less torturous, right? Sure, you have the less stigma because of the way you physically appear, but the internal trauma of losing control and having to compensate with exercise, it's basically a form of self-punishment that just cycles back and forth. So it's a tough concept for many, I think, to envision and understand, but hopefully now with this question, they'll be alerted to it. Now, people with obesity who don't have food addiction can often follow a very simple nutritional plan. It could be just lower your carbohydrates, just keep a stable CGM, just fast if you're not hungry, right? Like it could be really simple food rules and consistency and support that get them there. So I think absolutely, not everybody who has obesity has food addiction, and not everybody who's without obesity is without food addiction? It's an excellent question and an excellent point.
So let's get practical. Someone might be listening to this going, Dr. Tro, I'm obese. I've tried everything, everything. Like I'm so insulin resistant now. I just look at a single blueberry and I gain 10 pounds. There's people that are feel like they're doing everything right. So tell us what gets the results that you get. You've cracked the code. You know what you're doing. You're getting the results. What do people need to do?
The first and foremost, if I have a chronic yo-yo dieter, we've done the labs, we know this, 90% of people in my clinic come in with nutrient deficiency. Vitamin D is low, vitamin C is low, folate, B12, run down the line. All the minerals are low, magnesium's low, potassium's low, right? Everything is low. So that person will not lose weight. You can starve yourself. You will not be able to win. You will not win, okay? Because your mind in that nutrient deficiency, that mineral deficiency will win, and you will lose control. So first and foremost, somebody must be nutritionally replete. So a lot of times we recommend no weight loss, and we don't even care if you gain weight for the first 2 to 4 weeks, often longer, right? Just eat proper food. And this is a hard concept. Well, doc, I came to you to lose weight, and now you're telling me to gain weight. Yeah, I'm telling you to eat more, gain weight, become nutritionally replete, right? So that's step one, right? I think step two is stable glycemia. Stable glycemia and ketones predicts weight loss in our clinic. So if you need a goal, it should not be weight loss. It should be stable glycemia and ketone production. Um, and if you're not able to do that, sometimes you will need to fast. Okay. And that means fasting is a ketogenic intervention, it's not a deprivation, or exercise as a ketogenic intervention, not punishment. Right? We have people who've been low carb and have an insulin level of 20.
Mhm.
Stable blood sugar, high blood sugar, still with an insulin level of 20. And sometimes there's stress, sometimes there's inflammation, sometimes there's other things that need to be uncovered. But for the most part, the blood sugar's got to be stable, ketones need to be produced. So if you have nutritionally replete person, psychologically addressed person, right? Stable glycemia and ketones, this is a recipe for somebody to lose weight. If they are in control of their appetite, if they're nutritionally replete, fasting is easy. It's a pleasure. I went to a food addiction conference. I didn't eat for 3 days. I felt amazing. I didn't feel poor. I felt amazing.
That's not everyone's experience, though. Just so
Yeah,
you
certainly it's not. You
know.
have to, I'm nutritionally replete. I have proper electrolytes, right? I hydrate. I'm in control. I'm not suggesting that you start that way, particularly if you've been yo-yo dieting and suffering. But my point is that not eating is an expression of being nutritionally replete, of having stable glycemia, ketones, and understanding fully, what are your hunger signals, what are your triggers, and what you need to do, right? So I not ate almost effortlessly, and I came back and I ate in a way that I was happy about. And I didn't feel restriction. I didn't have these things. So I think fundamentally, when somebody starts with me, it's just eat real food, nutritionally filling food for a long enough time without caring of weight, without the PTSD of weight loss, not losing weight, without the PTSD of the scale, without the drama of I didn't gain weight, I didn't lose weight, none of that. Just eat, nourish your body in a way that you're proud about, happy about, in control. Then start to exert your control through stable glycemia and ketones. Then address the psychological factors, the emotional factors that lead to eating. Then go not eat effortlessly, right? Move your body because it gives you joy, right? So it's tough to explain, I think in an abstract way, and it sounds maybe too good to be true, but this is a recipe you can go and recreate. It's eat low carb until your hunger, like settles down. When you're not hungry, don't eat. If you are hungry, analyze why. I don't get hungry now. I get hungry when I'm stressed out or when I'm in pain or when I haven't slept. It's the only time I get hungry, right? So, I certainly get cravings. Sometimes I see food, and of course, when you see food, you want some, right? But I'm not a slave to food. I'm not, I'm not sneaking my colleague's chocolate at the workplace and stuffing my face before somebody comes into the room, hiding my wrappers because I'm ashamed of what I just ate. I'm not in that place anymore because of these things. I'm nutritionally replete. My minerals are repleted. I've addressed my psychological issues. I'm hormonally and metabolically and physiologically stable, and not eating or eating less or moving my body or having increased, energy expenditure effortlessly, which is what low carb does. All of these things make it easier for somebody who struggled. I don't know. Is that too much? Too
No,
esoteric?
it's super clear, super clear. When you talk about stabilizing, basically saying stable blood sugars, and obviously a CGM is essential for being able to be honest, like know for sure if the blood sugars are stable. Tell us the best way for people to start on that step. How do we know? How do we use the CGM? How do we know? What is the right number? What does stable mean?
Yeah. I think we have to separate the conversation for the person struggling or the clinician monitoring, or maybe both.
I would
So I'm
probably,
going to do,
if you're going to prioritize the person, probably.
okay, person struggling. Keep the line flat. Okay. Keep the line flat. You generally want to be between, let's say, 70 and 140 and as flat as possible. Now, you can't you can't be beholden to a number. Remember, like, you don't control this. You don't control your stress hormones. You don't control if you had sleep disturbance. You don't control your morning rise of cortisol. You don't control that exercise may increase your blood sugar, right? So there's a lot you don't control, right? So you can't like get bogged down by numbers, right? But generally, as flat of a line as you can, right? Between that 70 to 140 range. And when you eat a food, when I eat a food, if it raises more than 20 or 30 points, I don't eat it, right? And certainly if it goes up 100 points, I don't eat it. And to give you an idea of the things that go up 100 points in me, a banana and berries would raise it up 100 points if I had a banana and berries. If I had a bowl of cereal, it would go up 100 points. Um, if I had a cup of orange juice, it would go up 100 points, right? If I had whole grain oats or whole rolled steel cut oats, it would go up 100 points. So I avoid this and this extreme excursion, and the bounce back, the delta in your blood glucose levels is what predicts hunger and predicts weight gain. So if you're a person who went to Tor.health, got a CGM from us for $50, which is pretty darn cheap, and you put it on, you want to, sorry for the shameless plug, but you want to keep that blood sugar as stable as possible. And you want to monitor for the foods that cause a 20 or 30 point fluctuation. Now, if you're the clinician out there, you want the glycemic variability to below 12%, right? Which is the coefficient of variation of blood sugar. And it's not always food that does it. Certainly, like stress, infection, sleeplessness, pain can modify that. But you want to aim for a coefficient of variation of under 12%. Um, and what that does is it just removes a hunger. A drastically falling blood sugar removes a main drive of hunger in our modern day lives. It just makes like this lifestyle easier, right? So that's the purpose of keeping that blood sugar stable. There are other theoretic benefits. The blood sugar excursions attack every blood vessel in the body, eyes, kidneys, every artery in the body, nerve arteries, right? They it's sort of like the smoke, sort of like smoking. It causes an oxidative stress. But for appetite and weight, that stability predicts weight loss and decreased appetite.
And the third phase was, making ketones. Do you have to be continuously in ketosis? Can you talk about that? Or can people move in and out?
Yeah, so I think that there's something uniquely healing about ketones. Um, there's I don't think like again any number like including weight, right? I had a gentleman who gained 20 pounds in 3 days. Okay, like if he's beholden to that number, if he doesn't have a good understanding that this is just water weight, it's not real weight, right? And he makes it a moral failure that he put on 20 pounds of water, right? He's a very large gentleman, and this sort of fluctuations are normal. It can really be devastating. So blood sugar fluctuations, weight, ketones, these are all, surrogate markers, and they're not our moral compass. So first and foremost. But I do think that being in ketosis is healing. There's good data suggesting that ketones predict all disease, right? There's a linear relationship between claims, insurance claims, and ketone levels. So I think there's something uniquely healing. I think it has to do with the mental health impacts, but it's not exactly clear. So I think in our clinical practice, people move in and out of ketosis. We use it as a general barometer. When people's insulin resistance is stubborn, meaning their triglycerides are still high, their insulin levels are still high, their inflammation is still high, oftentimes we'll begin to track ketones just a little bit more, and we'll look for interventions beyond diet, like fasting and exercise, to see if we can adjust those hormones and promote ketogenesis even more. But it's not a be all end all. But I've gained weight in ketosis, so um, you know, I don't think I don't think any. I think all of these rules can be. I've gained weight with a stable blood sugar, right? So it's much harder to do. It's incredibly hard to have a ketone level of 3 and a stable blood sugar and gain weight. I would say you're less than 1% chance of achieving this. It doesn't mean it's not doable. It's just incredibly hard,
Mhm.
right? It's incredibly hard.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Does that
because I
answer your
think
question?
I was just thinking of the individuals who's like, oh no, not another keto guy. Everyone's just telling me I have to do keto and I don't want to do keto. I don't feel great on keto, or I don't think it's important. I don't think it's good to always be in ketosis. So I was speaking, I was asking a question for those people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my average ketones are probably zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5, which is like not even, ketosis.
Yeah.
Uh, for me to get my ketones high at this point, I have to fast for 2 to 3 days.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so yeah, but I mean, I think it's a silly to be ketophobic also. Like my 9-year-old son, he wakes up in ketosis, like just by sleeping and waking up and having a small, tiny liver, So I think that, you know, it's just a data point. It's not a moral failing, it's not um, I don't, yeah, it's just a data point to track, just like weight is, Do I really care about my weight? No. If I gained 10 pounds of muscle and lost 10 pounds of fat, I would be happy and I would have no weight difference, right? If I gained 10 pounds of muscle and didn't lose any fat, would I be happy? I should be, right? I should be. So no, if I'm in ketosis and I feel miserable, like who cares? Like why am I shouldn't chase that, you know, if I
Mhm.
feel unwell, So I don't know. I think it's tough to deal with the psychology sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that it's It's really helpful for people to hear that people move in, it's normal to move in and out of ketosis. All of our ancestors moved in and out of ketosis, especially in northern climates during winter, more likely to do ketosis, spring, summer, fall, maybe, more carbs come in, we're in and out. It's a normal state. It's not this extraordinary state that we have to work really, really hard and deprive ourselves and go really low carb and fat. It just naturally happens as we sort of ebb and flow with fasting and appetite and
Let me tell you, if you are time restricted eating like our ancestors did, right, and you are moving your body, you're in ketosis when you wake up.
yeah.
You're in ketosis if you are moving your body and just doing like just eating 2 meals, let's say, you're going to be in ketosis. You don't need to work for it. Your body's doing it,
Yeah.
right? So there's no work required. If you forget about a meal, you're in ketosis, right? So yes, it's not about deprivation. And yes, there are whole populations, specifically the tropical, that are higher in carbohydrate, right, and still maintain some degree of, ketogenesis. They're typically more active and typically a little bit, their food supply was very unique, not like our modern food supply. So yeah, no need for deprivation.
Right. Or
And I think that deprivation mindset is just it's the rigid deprivation mindset. I'm so glad you brought it up because I think there's another topic. Sorry to
you're,
my ADHD is flaring.
oh,
So
you're doing great. Just go.
yeah, so that rigid mindset and the I think it's one of the most harmful things. Like you don't need to do anything. The question is, what do you want? Right? How do you plan on achieving it? Right. So a lot of people I see fall into the trap of I must lower my carbohydrates or I must fast or I must this and then they don't get their results maybe they were looking for in the time frame they were looking for it. And they're just so rigid about I'm never gonna eat pizza. I'm never like if I wanted to eat pizza, there's nobody in the world that would stop me. If I wanted to have a cookie, I haven't had pizza in 10 years. Right? If I wanted a pizza, there's nobody in the world that would stop me. It's my choice. I choose to. Right? If I wanted pizza, I know how I would make it. Almond flour crust, no sugar sauce, pizza seasoning and mozzarella cheese. Right? I know how I would make it. Why would I make it like that? I want to enjoy my food and I want it to taste good. And I want it to be as low glycemic, low in processed carbohydrates as possible so I don't get that rebound hunger. Right? But I'm not deluding myself to think eating low carb pizza is going to help me lose weight. Oh, it's helping me, get the foods I want and I enjoy, not deprived, like, so I'm not deprived, and it's doing it in a way that's a little less harmful than our modern food environment, right? With
Love it.
the glyphosate flour and the, 3 packets of sugar per ounce of pizza sauce,
Wow.
right?
Right. A smart swap. What
Yeah.
about weighing and measuring? I'm sure you've had people come into your practice that come from backgrounds where we're encouraged to be precise with our portions. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a last line intervention for
Okay.
us. It's a last line intervention for us.
Yeah.
So if all else, so I think it makes no sense. My 9-year-old kid my 13-year-old kid who, when I was his age, I was 210 pounds. He is 100 pounds lighter than I was. Okay. He eats 4 hamburger patties, maybe 6 eggs, and he snacks on sardines. Right. Okay.
Wow.
So should I tell him not to eat? Was that too much? Right. Who am I to judge how much is right for him? Right. Who am I to tell him that's not good for him? So I'm not sure how to answer that question for most people. I just simply ask them, well, what amount does it take for you to get full? Right? And my daughter, who's 11, she has almost a pound of meat. I mean, how many women, Florence, do you know that eat a pound of meat?
Not many.
She is a healthy 11, she's going to be 12-year-old girl who plays basketball, has fun, goes to school, chills out all day. I mean, she is an amazing person and she's eating a pound of meat. Is that not ladylike? Should I tell her that, good girls don't eat that much? Right? So, so I find the discussion a bit preposterous, right? Like how much, who decides what a portion is, right? So I think ultimately we have to ask ourselves, is your food behavior getting you the results you want? If you've addressed food quality, if you've addressed your relationship to food and you still struggle, well, then the last line would be looking at portions, right? For us. And honestly, we keep it very simple. Take a picture, send it in. Take a picture. I think some people, and I'm speaking from experience, can become volume addicted,
Totally. That's the reason the
right?
portions. People could think,
Yeah.
I'll never overeat chicken. I could never overeat broccoli. And then they get rid of the processed stuff. And they're like, what? I'm overeating chicken and salad now.
Yeah. So 100%, I have not eaten any processed carbohydrates and sugar. I can overeat.
Hmm.
I can eat 4 pounds of meat easily. Yeah, your jaw dropped. So, but yeah, I can eat 4 pounds of meat.
Wow.
So, you know, am I that's what it takes for me to feel uncomfortable, right? I'm full after 1 pound. If you give me a pound and you tell me, Tro, go outside for a walk, I am full. If you give me 2 pounds and you go tell me you go outside for a walk, I'm full. If you give me 3 pounds, same thing, right? So the question is what makes me eat from 1 pound to 2 pounds to 3 pounds, right? So yeah, I think most people that's unheard of. Like I should have been a professional eater. I should have been like, those hot dog eating contests. I think I would have won. That's my natural ability, right? That's the size of it. But to answer your question, I think the idea of portion control is probably a last line intervention for us. If we suspect somebody is volume addicted, we would offer maybe two options. One would be gated eating, which would be like you leverage fasting. Like maybe you want to have a big portion and you like the feeling of feeling full and you want that. Well,
Mhm.
then you have to give somewhere, right? So maybe you gotta lower the insulin on a fasting day or something like that. Or, I gotta be honest, I had a patient who literally said, Tro, I think I'm eating too much. And I was like, well, what do you want to do about it? We came up with the idea that his wife is going to set his portion. So his wife was super, super supportive lady, set his portion, for dinner, and he lost like 30 pounds just by letting his wife set his portion.
Mhm.
Right? He was full, he was fine, he was good. His wife just set his portion, right? So I think it's an intervention that works. Sometimes we do like controlled eating. So we'll recommend like a keto or low carb or high protein meal that's pre-made, or maybe they have a little time to work or something like that. It's like a prepackaged thing they could just heat up. Um, I'm happy to say the name. No sponsors or no relationship, but we use Factor. We use Factor meals. So that's an option that works for some people. Like maybe one meal is unconstrained and one meal is very, sort of portioned. Um, but that would be a last line thing intervention for us, portion control, unless we upfront thought that volume addiction was a key factor at play.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful because I know that you're not always assessed as to whether or not you have a volume issue when you go into some programs, particularly 12-step programs for food addiction. You just are assumed that you're going to have an issue with volume. And so everyone gets on the same plan and you weigh and you measure. And some people love the scale and some people just, it's just a struggle to make peace with it. They don't want to have to bring it to restaurants. Every day that they don't get it perfect, they feel like psychologically off. Like there's pros and cons to the scale, and I was just curious to see where you landed on it.
I think it's more of a con, to be honest. I think that, from my perspective, it's unnecessary for most people. I think if you simple question the screen for it. If I were to put out quarter pound hamburger patties in front of you, how many can you eat until you're full? Right? And if the answer is 8, 9, 10 or more, well, that's somebody who's got a huge volume capacity, right? If it's less than that, then it's not something you have to worry too much about. So in terms of like using the scale, I'm not sure how many we haven't done it. Haven't done it. We haven't used the scales. I think it's just a lot easier. Take a picture and send it to your coach.
Mhm.
Like take a picture, send it to your coach. If it gives somebody some peace to use a scale, by all means use it. But it's not something we use.
Okay. Okay. I think it's really helpful for people to hear that because there's a lot of people coming out of 12-step programs who aren't aware that there's other ways, that there's other options. There's lots of right ways of doing this. And yours is really unique and highly effective. And I think it's going to be really encouraging for people who don't want to have to weigh and measure everything. Some people love it. For some people, it's a tool.
I'm gonna just take it a step further. And sorry to do this.
No.
Telling somebody to eat 4 ounces of meat, I think, is malpractice. Okay, telling somebody to eat 4 ounces of meat and not to eat any more than that is malpractice. I don't. My When my kid was 6, when my youngest kid, who's now 9, it was 6, he ate well over that, right? Well over that, just to be reasonably full, right? And these are not overweight, food addicted people, right? So
Well,
telling somebody to have 4 ounces of meat or 4 ounces of fish or 4 ounces of chicken or 4 ounces of satiating food is malpractice, in
I'm
my
guilty of
opinion.
malpractice, just for the record.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. It's not, don't think of my well, maybe if well, let me clarify that. Unless there's a serious volume issue at play, or unless the person wants it, you
Yeah.
know,
I mean,
four
fair.
ounces of,
I usually
you
say
know,
between 4 or 5 ounces is a pretty decent size of protein for a woman. Like just kind of start there. Make sure you get at least that. But I'm
oh,
aware.
at least that. So now we're saying, at least that. Fine, I'll take at least that.
Okay.
Sure, but I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know how. Like would never tell my daughter that. I would never say have one hamburger patty, right? Which is 4 ounces of meat. I can't.
Okay.
I can't say that to her. I would like literally be depriving her.
Yeah. And I love
You
that
know.
she can break it down. There's lots of us that have very damaged metabolisms and gallbladders and liver issues. And right, like
Oh
it's
yeah,
not
you're
even
absolutely right. Yeah.
possible. It's not even
Yeah.
possible. I could never eat more than a patty of meat. Not a chance. Not a, but I'm a 50 plus
Well, you're
menopausal
weight
woman.
stable. It's worked for you, but you maybe eat more frequently. Maybe you just can't
Yes.
stomach it, right? Like so there's always that individuality.
Yes.
But I don't, but
Yes.
generally in my practice, I don't have people who have been told, have been told to limit satiating food, and
Yeah.
I think it's a setup to fail. So, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, Florence.
No, no,
Like
no, it's all good.
now I'm embarrassed. I'm like, my friends.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. I think this is the beauty of acknowledging bioindividuality. There's some people that can break down a pound of meat, and there's some people who could not. It would sit in their stomachs. They don't have enough hydrochloric acid or whatever, whatever. And that
Yeah.
we get to be bioindividual.
Yeah. Well,
That,
certainly every patient is treated individually. I haven't met anybody who could accept I'll tell you, I've met one person in my life who can't do more than 4 ounces of meat, and it's my wife.
oh yeah, no.
It's my wife, you know,
Is she
one
a
person in
is
my
she a
life.
blood type A?
I have to go check what blood type she is.
You're a blood
Yeah.
type O.
Yeah, I have to go check what blood type she is.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't know, but she's the only person I met. You could not force her to eat, more. Maybe like if you go to, yeah, you're unique though.
There's a few more of us out there, and some of us sort of gravitate more towards the omnivore, vegetarian, whole food. Like because we do better with vegetables and lighter proteins, and there's only so much stomach acid we have. My understanding, and I know people look at me like, never say that publicly, Florence, you are professionally embarrassing yourself. But I swear to you, there's something to the blood type diet, a little something, because I can
It
tell.
is.
I think there is because my blood type A's, you ask them, they will gravitate to lower meat and they like their vegetables, especially leafy greens. And my blood type O's, just give me steak. Just give me beef, give me meat. They love it and they can process it no problem. They can eliminate it no problem. It's a miracle to me. I think, wow, how do you do that? I'm a blood type A, totally. But anyways.
Absolutely could be. So I'm gonna eat my words now. I shouldn't be this angry New Yorker. You know, oh
No,
my
not at
God.
all.
Yeah.
Dr. Tro, how can people work with you? How can people find you?
Um, yeah, you can. So I'm on the board of the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. I also am a member of the Coalition of Metabolic Health. So if you're out there, if you're a physician, nurse, PA, health coach, and you're looking for help to get the education or the resources to and sort of be a part of a broader community, I'm a part of these two organizations, the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, with Rob Sivas, who'll be talking later this week, and Mark Cucuzzella, and so many others, Doug Reynolds and Eric Westman and Laura Buchanan. And then the coalition, I think, is a great resource for everybody who's just looking for the Coalition of Metabolic Health. Really spearheaded by the Bazooki Group. So look out for more work from them. And if you're looking for our nationwide medical practice, it's Toward.health. Toward Health is the name of the practice. We need people. If you're interested in what I just said, if we need to grow our medical practice. Florence and I were talking about it. We have about 15,000 people in the app. It needs to be 150,000. We need to expand with 3 doctors, 4 coaches, a personal trainer, and we are looking to help people make permanent changes. We're a medical practice, so we can help, taper and titrate medications, and that's toward.health. And then all social media, if you really want to do that, if you want to, but I recommend against it. But Dr. Tro at Dr. Tro. Yeah, hopefully come interact.
Mhm. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for the work that you do, for this interview today, for your passion for living proof that obesity can be reversed and there's life after it. And it can be so good that never lose hope. Reach out for help. Dr. Tro will hold your hand and walk you through. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. Thanks for tuning in this week. If you would like more interviews, more information, and more inspiration on how to break up with sugar, go to my YouTube channel, Kick Sugar Coach, or my website, kicksugarcoach.com. See you next week.